Hey guys, thanks for stopping by my channel today. We have a request from Daniel Brown he says, I would be interested in how you work with reverb in 5.1 mixes. So that's a great idea for a topic. I think overall people try to use too much reverb when they're mixing, especially when they're just starting out. I know I did. I would use like reverb on all the dialogue for a scene because it happened in like a kitchen. And the truth is, you do not need to do that. Like, you can add no reverb, and with the right tracks, it's going to be perfect. So don't feel like you have to add reverb just because, you have to justify your paycheck or your job. We're going to look at my Pro Tools template in a little bit, and I'll show you how I have my reverb set up. But just as kind of an overall philosophy with pretty much everything, if I'm mixing, I always ask the question, why? Why would I do this? If I think I want to add reverb or I want to EQ something or compress it, why am I doing this? And I need to have a really good reason for it, because you don't always have to do stuff to what's recorded. Sometimes you can just let it play. Sometimes you can do just a little EQ or volume. Sometimes nothing at all. Just leave it. It's totally fine. Don't feel like you have to be doing something all the time. And that's where the experience comes in of knowing when you need to touch something and when you can kind of be hands off with it. So let's just look at my template real quick. You can check this template out. It's on my website. But just for kind of an overall, like how I have it laid out, I've got routing folders and everything. I've got my stem and bus, VCAs, dialogue aux, PFX aux, music aux, sound effects aux, and these are further broken up, especially the sound effects into like Foley and things like that. But on every stem, it's basically the same deal. I've got 4 kind of general purpose, like really useful mono reverbs, which I'm just using Revibe. I've gone through everything from like Altiverb to Phoenix Verb to whatever. Like, I've tried rooms, like all these different flavor of the month reverbs, and everybody has their things they like to use. I'm not knocking that, but you can get by with pretty much any reverb. Like, I use Chameleon too. Like, I use Chameleon as an audio suite for matching ADR, and I've kind of played around with using it as a mono reverb. I might like do that more, but why do I like Revibe? It comes with Pro Tools. I can take this session pretty much anywhere, and I don't have to give them a list of, well, here's my, I gotta have these plugins or else I can't work. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the, yeah, man, let's get it done. Whatever you got. So Revibe, it's super easy to use. It sounds fine. And I've got 4 sends. I've got a slap, which is just all early reflections. Like, it's just a bunch of early reflections. It's kind of for like outdoor, like if somebody's far away, out in the woods or down an alleyway, you can use it for that. Then I've got a short reverb, which is like 400 milliseconds. This is just a small room, like a bedroom, or other like, small boxy room. I've got a medium reverb, which is about a second. So like a bigger kitchen or like, an I use this for offices and stuff like that. And then I've got like a 2.5 second long, like, it has to match a parking garage or probably a gymnasium, but honestly, it'd be probably more like 5 seconds on that. But yeah, it's all based on time, like, shortest to longest. And I have that for each set of tracks. I've got it for sound effects. I don't have it for music because I generally am treating the music not with the mono reverb, but with the 5.0 reverb. But I've got it for the sound effects and the PFX and the dialogue, and I think, yeah, I've got it for the Foley too. So Foley has its own reverb. And then I've got 2 5.0 reverbs. I used to use Phoenix Verb, but just to keep things simple, Revibe for the win. And it's a 5.0. Yeah, all this stuff. I think I've got this one. Yeah, the first one set up on a. They're actually both short. Like, all these 5.0 verbs I will set based on the show, and I might not even use them for a show. Like, they might just be in my session and never get hit with anything. But I'll automate them based on, like, well, they're in a big church and the first line is really far back and I want it to sound, in all the speakers. So I'll use the 5.0 reverbs for that, but I don't really use stereo reverbs anymore. So it's just 4 mono and 2 5.0 verbs. The music aux, I've got 2 reverbs, 2 5.0 reverbs. One of them is inactive because I generally don't have to do too much of that. And actually what I like to do for like the source music is actually put the reverb on the track, because I can, without doing like a, pre-fade send, I can do 100% wet reverb mix on the track much easier. And I can also like compress the reverb and just process the reverb like on the track level instead of sending it through an aux. So that's the kind of basic overview. The nice thing about having these, I don't have PFX verbs. These just go, these just go to the FX verb, which is fine because the PFX are going to the sound effects stem. So I misspoke on that, sorry. But the basic thing is just having like your kind of most common bread and butter mono reverbs for things like dialogue matching or just putting a little space on a wide shot. Having them set up on separate tracks means instead of having to automate just 1 mono or 2, you can just change the send level. So if I needed, for example, this, let's say there's a line here on dialogue 1 and I wanted that to be a little distant, then I just go to my sends, and you can do this with a control surface too, but just to visualize it, they're outside, I want it to slap a little bit, I'll go here and just bam, bring that up, and now it's going to sound, there's going to be like an echo. Filmmakers like called an echo, but it's a delay basically, or a bunch of delays stacked up. So you can switch plugins on these on your own template. Like some people have, they have to have cinematic rooms, or they have to have Altiverb, or they have to have, what's the Chameleon or Stratus or Symphony. Like use whatever you got. If you're not taking your session anywhere, it's totally fine to do that. But I just I feel like I could even use Deverb and get, for the mono ones at least, I could get a pretty good result. So it's all about knowing how to tweak stuff, and getting, the biggest thing is like more early reflections. That's a huge thing with mixing a film, is you don't want that, like most of the time you don't want that buttery tail, that like nice Lexicon 480, modulated tail. You just want the reverb to like give you a sense of space, and most of that comes from the early reflections and not the actual tail. So on your reverb, just bring the early reflections up, and then bring like the actual reverb stuff down, like you can dampen it more, and you can EQ it more to like kind of get rid of the wash and just keep more of the the reflections, which gives you the space, the mental picture of the space. The tail is just like, it sounds cool if you're doing like 80s hair metal snares. So that's my reverb setup. I will often on ADR here, or production that needs to match, I will audio suite the reverb and like copy it down to another track. And the reason I do that is because I often want to process the reverb the same way I'm processing on the track. So if I'm using Cedar to take out some noise, but I add reverb and I need it to match the other roomy lines, like especially for ADR where it's recorded up close or no room tone, no reverb on it at all, I want to process the reverb with whatever I'm using on the tracks. So then I can just copy the automation and paste it down here. So don't be afraid of, that's where like using Chameleon or any of the other reverbs is totally, even Soundly Place it, like it sounds really good. So use that for like one-offs, like this one line has to match. But as far as like taking an entire scene and sending it to reverb, very rarely do that. It'll be, maybe if I've cleaned up the audio so much that I've taken out like the natural reverb, which I don't like to do, but if I've had to do that for some other reason, then I'll be like, well, now this stuff recorded in a warehouse sounds like it's, in a booth, and so I need to liven it up. But it's always like that question of, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because I want it to sound cool and people to pat me on the back and say, wow, that mix was really good? Never do anything for that reason. Do it for the reason of this helps the film, or this tells the story, or this is how the character is feeling. Like in that case, yeah, if you need them to feel the space of the room, like, oh, this is a huge empty space, sure, add reverb. But keep in mind things like intelligibility and like music and the backgrounds. Like once you add all the other tracks in, you'll find that you have to use so much reverb to hear the reverb over the top of the music that's cranking away that it's better to just not have any reverb. Just take the reverb off. Just let it play clean. Like there's other stuff going on. When there's no music and it's really thin, that's where the reverb can be kind of useful, because then it becomes part of the soundscape. So that's kind of my spiel on reverb and how I use it. There's so many other ways to do it. Some people will have pre-fade sends and post-fade sends, so they can do 100% wet reverb. Like I said, if I have to do that for a line, I'll just audio suite it, and then I can kind of mix it as like an audio file, and that also makes it easier to take to another studio because I'm not having to worry about, well, what plugins do you have? So I guess you could also freeze your reverb if you wanted to do it that way. But yeah, that's it. I'll try to do some more videos on other requests. I had a request for ADR, which is really a great topic, like matching ADR. And then probably one on like sound effects and stuff like that. If you have any other requests, any other ideas about audio mixing or dialogue editing, go ahead and drop a comment and I'll try to get to them as soon as possible, which work is starting to pick up a little bit for me, so it might take me a little bit longer, but I'm really thankful to be working again after the strikes. So hope you guys are too, and I will catch you on the next video.